All right, so I already gave this lecture twice today, so excuse me if I'm a little boring. I'm trying to get this done for you guys because I really do. I want you to have this ready to go, and if you have questions and stuff, we can go ahead and go through those on Monday. We want to be ready for our lab because I'm really excited. It's our first dissection lab. So let's go ahead and finish up with our connective tissues, and then we'll go to muscle tissue, and then you can do your quiz. So cartilage. This one is super cool. We find cartilage throughout our body, and it actually serves a bunch of different functions. So one of the things that it does is it's actually a framework of support for different structures within our body. So for example, if you go ahead and touch the tip of your nose, you'll feel kind of a rubbery-like thing there. That's all connected. That's connective tissue, specifically cartilage connective tissue. We also find that within our ears. Its intercellular matrix has a ton of fibers, just like dense connective tissue, but in between all of those, it has this gel-like substance. So it's not liquid, it's not really fluid, it's more jelly-like. One of the things with cartilage that makes it unique is that it doesn't have a direct blood supply, and so it's really pretty slow to heal. So if you go ahead and get cartilage pierced, sometimes it'll take a really, really long time before you can go ahead and put a different earring in or any of those kind of things because of that lack of direct blood supply. So the locations piece here is a little bit funky because it says hyaline cartilage, elastic cartilage, and fibrocartilage. And it's like, well, that's not really helpful. That doesn't really give us locations. But these three different types of cartilage we find in a couple of different places in the body. And I have a picture for us where we'll go ahead and look at those different pieces. So leave some space for yourself where you can go ahead and say, okay, hyaline cartilage is found, blah, elastic cartilage is found, blah, and fibrocartilage is found in blah, okay? So you only need to write a couple of these down where they're found, but you should do a couple of locations so you know the difference and where they're found. Again, if I'm going too fast through the slides, just know that this will be online, so you'll have a chance to go ahead and get these. So please, if you do get behind, take the time this weekend to go ahead and catch yourself up or come in tomorrow on Friday to see me so you can get these notes. All right, our next piece. Looking at where those different types of cartilage are, you can see right here, there's our key. Hyaline cartilage is in blue, elastic cartilage is in gray, and fibrocartilage is in red. So if we look at hyaline cartilage, the first thing is right here. We find it in our trachea and within our lungs. So if you want to go ahead and just grab the front of your neck, just where that trachea is, you can feel it when you talk, when you breathe, you'll feel the air passing through there. If you go ahead and swallow, you'll feel your epiglottis and everything move up. And so if you just go ahead, you can move your trachea back and forth. That's pretty cool. That's cartilage there. And so it's a funny type of material because it's hard, but it's not completely immobile, and you can kind of move it around, play with it. And that's hyaline cartilage there. We also find hyaline cartilage in our nose. And that's where we find hyaline cartilage. Same kind of feeling there, so you can feel your nose and check that out. We also find it in between our joints. So if you look here, we find it here in our shoulder joints, our elbows, in our hip joints. The other place that we go ahead and we find hyaline cartilage is within our rib cage here. So our rib cage isn't strictly bone. That front part is actually all going to be hyaline cartilage. Then what we see is the elastic cartilage. We find it in our hands and in our toes. Okay, so all those little joints that we have in our hands and our toes, that's where we go ahead and we find elastic cartilage, and we also find it within our ears. So elastic cartilage makes up that external ear. Fibrocartilages, those are going to be found in our intervertebral discs in between our vertebral column. So you'll find them all the way through there and also in our knees. All right, here's another picture for you. You can see there's that intervertebral disc made of cartilage, hyaline cartilage here in between the joints, and then that elastic cartilage here in our ears. All right, so bone. This one's pretty cool. It's one of the tissues that we find that actually has a hardened matrix. It's calcified. So when we say calcified, that just means that it's been solidified with calcium. So the matrix is hard. It's solid. Bone, of course, is going to be there for support and protection, like we already talked about, and we find it within the skeleton. All right. So here's bone. It's pretty fun looking stuff. This picture off to the right-hand side, we'll see this right here. This is an osteocyte. So osteo means bone, and site is going to mean cell. So we have a bone cell right here, and they're kind of funny-looking creatures. But each of these black dots all the way around this crop circle deal are going to be osteocytes. Those are bone cells throughout this calcified matrix around them. So another picture here going ahead and showing again those crop circles. And we're going to look at how these work with growing bone and producing blood cells and all those different things. We'll be looking at those in just a couple of chapters. All right, so blood, this is our last one for connective tissue, and then we'll go through muscle. So blood is the weirdest type of connective tissue, just because of that liquid piece to it. Hey, I got an email. Blood is really, it's just kind of funny. We don't ever think of it as connective tissue. It's like, okay, how does it connect things, right? But it does. It has a connection there between the lungs and the rest of our body, between the cells and our kidneys, between all these different pieces. Blood is the main transportation. It's one of those big things that goes ahead and moves waste products, and it moves nutrients and all these different kinds of things. So we find that blood has quite a few different types of cells in it. It doesn't just have red blood cells. It also has white blood cells and a lot of other cells that provide immunity for the rest of our body. So that goes hand in hand with that function. It's there for transportation of different materials, wastes and building materials, and energy, nutrients, all those kind of things, and it's there to protect our body. Of course, we find blood within our blood vessels. Okay. So here's a picture for us. These are our little red blood cells, and this is that big white blood cell that does the job of eating things within the blood that might be foreign or even dead red blood cells, so it's really good there for that immune function. This is another artist rendition of blood. So we see we've got lots of red blood cells, lots of that intercellular matrix there in between them. They're not packed together like epithelial cells. We also see we've got those white blood cells there. And then we have this cool little pieces here all the way throughout. Now these are platelets. You've probably heard this before. We go ahead and we use those for damage control if we go ahead and get a hole in one of our blood vessels. Those platelets are going to go ahead and fill that up. So platelets are actually just pieces of cytoplasm from the bone marrow. So they are found within our bone. And so that, I just think that's really cool. Our cells from our bone go ahead and are in charge of filling the cracks, basically, if we get a scratch or a cut. All right, so muscle tissue. This is our third major type of tissue. Our last one is nervous tissue, which we'll go over on Monday. So muscle tissue is, of course, there to go ahead and contract and move us. So if we want to talk, or if we want to write or paint or run or any of those kind of things, we have to have muscles go ahead and contract. Those muscle tissues have to contract so that we can go ahead and move whatever they're attached to. So you can shorten this down for those general characteristics. Just put, okay, muscle tissues contract for movement. Boom. So we have three different types of muscle tissue. We have skeletal, smooth, and cardiac. Skeletal is the one we're probably the most used to because that's the one, you know, we go ahead and feel on our biceps or in our legs or our abdomen. Any of those places, that's where we're going to go ahead and find skeletal muscle. So we'll look at those other two here in the next couple of slides. All right, so skeletal muscle. We go ahead and we can see here skeletal muscle is striated. It's got those little lines there, and it's also these really long fibers. So this is just a bunch of cells that have been fused together to make this long fiber. We see that with the cardiac muscle, it's a lot different. It's branched. It still has some striations in it, but it has these intercalated discs that are really important for its longevity. Our last one there is smooth muscle. To me, it kind of looks like little worms, so it's very different than either one of these here in its shape. Okay, so skeletal muscle. One of the biggest things you want to remember about skeletal muscle is that it's voluntarily controlled. So most of the time, skeletal muscles are things that we make the decision whether they're going to move or not. So we say to our brain, okay, I want to go ahead and grab this apple and eat it. So that takes a lot of different nerve impulses to go ahead and contract those muscles to go ahead and do those movements. So we make that conscious decision. The cells we already talked about, we saw them, those are those muscle fibers. They're really long, very thread-like, which goes ahead and helps us classify them if we're looking at pictures. When you go ahead and want to move something, you're going to send that nerve signal again, and that impulse is going to make the muscle fibers go ahead and contract. When the signal has passed through them, they'll go ahead and relax, and that'll be the end of your movement, basically. So the biggest thing you want to remember here is that skeletal muscle is voluntary, and it is thread-like, really long fibers. We call them muscle fibers. So here's a picture for us. Again, those are all nuclei, so these are a bunch of cells fused together to make this one long fiber, and then all those little striations, those are one of the big ways that we can tell that this is skeletal muscle. So this isn't an artist rendition, this is actually a picture of muscle fibers, and so it's really easy to see all those striations throughout and the different bundles of cells that are right here separated together. So you'll be able to see that when we go ahead and go through the muscle chapter and we dissect our cats. We'll be doing a lot of work with muscles. All right, so smooth muscle tissues. Those ones are different than skeletal muscle in that they are involuntary most of the time. We do not choose to go ahead and move our smooth muscle. We choose to move our skeletal muscle, but not our smooth muscle. So these ones we find in hollow internal organs. So you will probably want to write what some of those could be. So hollow internal organs could include our digestive tract. So our large intestine, our small intestine. Also, other hollow internal organs would be our blood vessels. So those are going to have smooth muscle tissue to go ahead and move the blood back up to the heart. So of course we know with smooth muscle, we don't make the choice to go ahead and move our food through our stomach and then into our small intestine and through our large intestine, right? We don't make that choice. So that smooth muscle there is very, very involuntary. We do not choose to contract it. So here's a picture for us. Again, it kind of looks like those just little wormy pieces. There's some more matrix in between each of those cells. So it is very different looking than the skeletal muscle. Again, this is an actual picture. It's not an artist's rendition. So it's a little bit harder to see here, but these are whole cells. Here's another cell, but it's almost like you're looking at a really fast current. So it's kind of hard to see because of all those little squiggly lines, but not as ordered, not in fibers, not striated, all those things the skeletal muscle is. All right, our last one here, cardiac muscle, yay! So this one, of course, cardiac meaning heart. It's heart muscle tissue. It's only in the heart. And one of the really important differences between it and the other muscle tissues is that it has intercalated discs. So this is another term you may want to go ahead and make a vocab card for, just like adipose tissue. Intercalated discs are found within cardiac muscle, and they go ahead and help make sure that the heart can just continue beating on and on and on and on, so that, you know, unlike our other muscles, cardiac muscle doesn't get tired if we take good care of it. And then it's also going to have those branched networks. All right, so let's go ahead and look at some pictures here. So this is cardiac muscle with an artist rendition here. You'll see it's very branched, has those intercalated discs, but it also has some striations in it as well, just like the skeletal muscle tissue. And here's an actual picture of it. You can see again those intercalated discs right there, those lines. You can see them all the way throughout there, and then the branched nature of the cardiac muscle. All right, so you made it through the notes. Woo! Awesome job. Now what you need to do is go ahead and either pull out your phone or grab an iPad from the cart, and you're going to use Safari and go to kahoot.it. It might already be up because we were using it yesterday. So go to kahoot.it and then just wait, and we'll get it all set up for you.